The galaxy was full of countless stars, each one surrounded by worlds of beauty, danger, and mystery. For thousands of years, civilizations had spread across the stars, mapping planets, building trade routes, and creating alliances. Yet there were still places no one dared to go. Some planets were marked as red zones, deathworlds where survival was almost impossible. Species stronger, faster, and more dangerous than any war machine lived there. Many explorers who tried to land on those worlds were never seen again. In the far edge of known space, one of these planets had a reputation that spread through every council and colony. The records showed no successful landings, no trade, no outposts. Only silence. The few scans made from orbit reported storms, strange magnetic fields, and massive moving lifeforms. To most, it was a cursed world. The kind of place you spoke about in whispers, the kind of place you warned new explorers never to approach. It was a planet where even the strongest civilizations admitted their limits. And yet, in the dark of space, a human ship was moving toward it. The signal was first detected by automated probes. It was faint, almost lost in the background noise of the cosmos. The signal repeated itself every few hours, simple pulses of energy that carried no clear meaning. To alien species, it was dismissed as planetary interference, just natural noise. But to human ears, it was different. There was a pattern, a rhythm that suggested intelligence. The human crew sat in silence as the data came in. The captain, a woman named Mara, stared at the display, her expression calm but sharp. The officers around her exchanged nervous glances. They all knew where the signal was coming from. "It's from Erythra Prime," the navigator whispered. That name alone sent shivers through the crew. Erythra Prime, the deathworld no one dared to visit. Legends claimed that its surface was a living battlefield, where predators larger than starships hunted anything that moved. The strongest claws, the deadliest venom, the fastest reflexes, everything the galaxy feared had evolved there. To most species, the planet was untouchable, sacred in its danger. But humanity had a different way of thinking. Where others saw a threat, they saw a challenge. Where others felt fear, they felt curiosity. The captain leaned back in her chair. "Set course," she said. The crew hesitated. Some lowered their eyes, some clenched their fists. But not one of them disobeyed. Engines roared to life, and the ship turned toward the planet. As they approached, the world came into view, a sphere wrapped in storm clouds, thick green jungles visible through the gaps. Lightning cracked across the atmosphere like veins of fire. The planet looked alive, restless, as if it was waiting for prey. The crew watched in silence. One of them finally spoke, voice trembling. "Captain, nobody comes back from that place." Mara's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Then we'll be the first." The closer they came, the stronger the signal grew. The pulses of energy were clearer now, and the ship's AI confirmed it was not random. Something intelligent was sending it. Something, or someone, on the planet wanted to be found. But why here, of all places? The scanners detected enormous life signs moving below the jungle canopy. Massive creatures with spiked tails and armored hides, their heat signatures glowing like moving volcanoes. Others slithered through rivers, leaving trails of devastation in their wake. The ship sensors almost couldn't keep up. Every scan revealed more predators, more dangers. The world was not just alive. It was overflowing with killers. Most species would have fled by now, shutting off the scanners, running to safety. But the humans stayed. Every new reading only made their eyes shine brighter with curiosity. They weren't afraid. One officer, a younger man named Elias, finally asked the question no one else dared. "Captain, why us? Why are we the ones landing here? The Council forbade this planet centuries ago." Mara didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window at the storm-covered world. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and steady. "Because humanity is not like the others. They see danger and turn away. We see danger and walk toward it. If someone down there is calling for help, or calling for a challenge, it is our duty to answer. No matter the cost." The ship broke through the upper atmosphere. Fire streaked across the hull as it entered the storm. The crew braced as turbulence shook them violently. Rain hammered the metal like falling stones. The sound of thunder was so loud it seemed to echo through the ship itself. Then, For the first time, they saw the surface. The jungle stretched endlessly in every direction. Trees taller than skyscrapers reached toward the storm clouds, their leaves shining with alien colors. Strange lights flickered between the shadows, like the eyes of hidden beasts. The ground below shifted with movement, as if the entire forest was breathing. The crew stared in awe and fear. Landing zone marked, the AI announced. Warning, hostile environment. High risk. The captain stood and fastened her armor. Prepare the landing team, she ordered. One by one, the humans locked their gear into place. Armor sealed, weapons checked, helmets pulled down. The sound of metal clicking and systems powering up filled the cabin. Elias hesitated before putting on his helmet. His hands trembled. What if we don't make it? He asked softly. Mara looked at him with calm eyes. Then we prove we were not afraid. And sometimes, that is enough. The shuttle detached from the main ship, engines flaring as it descended into the jungle. Rain pounded the glass, lightning splitting the sky in blinding flashes. The ground rushed up to meet them, green and alive and dangerous. As they landed, the jungle exploded with noise. Screeches, roars, and the rustle of massive bodies moving in the shadows. The air was thick, heavy, filled with the smell of earth and something metallic. The humans stepped out, their boots sinking into wet soil. The silence that followed was unnatural. Every creature was watching them. Hidden eyes gleamed from the trees, the rivers, the tall grass. The humans felt the weight of the planet pressing down on them, testing them. Then, the signal pulsed again. Louder now, closer. Something on this Deathworld was calling them forward. The crew exchanged glances, and for the first time, fear cracked through their calm faces. But the captain only smiled. She raised her weapon, not in fear, but in readiness. Let's find out, she whispered. And so, with the storm raging above and monsters waiting in the shadows, humanity took its first steps into the deadliest world the galaxy had ever known. Every other species had avoided this place, but not them. Humanity had come, not with arrogance, but with determination. The galaxy had wondered for centuries what would happen if the strongest predators of the Deathworld ever crossed paths with humans. Now, the answer was about to be written. And it began with a single step into the jungle, where every leaf could hide a killer, every shadow could be death, and every heartbeat echoed against the silence of creatures waiting to strike. Yet the humans did not retreat. Their boots pressed into the mud, their weapons steady, their eyes sharp. In that moment, the jungle seemed to pause, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Because for the first time in its long, deadly history, the strongest predators were no longer the hunters. They had just met humanity. The storm still raged above as the humans moved deeper into the jungle. Rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking their armor, sliding down their visors, and pooling in the muddy ground at their feet. Each step was slow, deliberate, careful. The trees towered so high they seemed to swallow the sky, their twisted roots breaking the earth like coiled snakes. The air was thick, almost alive, filled with the sound of insects buzzing, the distant rumble of something large moving through the brush, and the constant hiss of falling water. No one spoke. The silence between the crew was not only discipline, it was survival. Every sound they made felt like a signal, like a whisper that might draw predators out of the shadows. Their boots pressed against the wet soil, leaving deep tracks that were almost instantly washed away by the rain. The jungle seemed to resist their presence, as if the planet itself wanted them gone. Then they saw it. A claw mark, carved into the trunk of a tree that rose at least 100 meters high. The mark was deep, slashed across the bark with brutal force. The cut was wider than a human torso, sharp at the edges as though made by a blade, but too raw, too uneven to be a weapon. It was made by something alive. Something with claws large enough to tear through solid wood as easily as paper. One of the crew members swallowed hard. That thing, it wasn't trying to hunt. It was marking territory. The captain ran her gloved hand across the cut, her eyes narrowing. The claw had dug deep into the tree, nearly 10 centimeters into the hardened bark. She didn't speak, but the truth was written on her face. Whatever lived here was not just strong. It was monstrous. The ground trembled. A low rumble moved through the earth, shaking loose droplets from the leaves above. The crew froze, weapons raised, their breathing shallow. From the thick mist ahead, shapes began to move. At first, they thought it was just shadows. But then the shadows grew eyes, glowing, yellow, unblinking. Dozens of them. The figures stepped closer, their movements silent despite their enormous size. Creatures covered in dark scales, bodies coiled with muscle, claws scraping against stone. Their heads elongated, their jaws bristling with teeth that gleamed in the dim light. Each breath they released came out as a hiss, hot steam rising into the cold air. They surrounded the humans with slow, careful steps, as if studying them before deciding what to do. Elias gripped his weapon tighter, his finger trembling on the trigger. His heart hammered in his chest, but he didn't fire. The captain's hand went up, signaling silence. No one moved. No one dared. The creatures stopped a few meters away. Their size was staggering, twice as tall as the humans, their bodies hunched and coiled like predators ready to strike. Their tails swayed slowly from side to side, ending in sharp, bone-like blades. Their eyes never blinked, fixed entirely on the small group of humans who dared to stand before them. The air was so heavy with tension it felt like breathing fire. The crew knew one wrong move, one twitch of fear, and they would be torn apart in seconds. But the captain did not flinch. She stood tall, her visor reflecting the creature's glowing eyes, her weapon lowered but ready. The largest of the creatures stepped forward. Its chest expanded as it let out a low growl, deep and resonant, like thunder rolling across the land. The sound vibrated through the human's bones, shaking them to the core. The beast opened its jaws, revealing row after row of jagged teeth, and for a moment, it looked ready to strike. But it didn't. Instead, it leaned closer. Its hot breath washed over the captain's armor, steaming against the cold rain. The creature studied her, its eyes narrowing, as though it recognized something familiar, or something dangerous. Then it let out a sudden roar, so loud the trees themselves shook. Birds scattered from the canopy, smaller creatures fled into the shadows, and even the ground seemed to quake beneath the sound. The other beasts echoed the roar, their voices blending into a chorus of fury that filled the jungle. Yet still, they did not attack. They circled the humans, snapping their jaws, growling, testing. It was not a hunt. It was a warning. Elias's voice cracked through the comms, barely above a whisper. Why aren't they killing us? The captain's eyes narrowed. Because they're waiting. They want to see what we'll do. The realization sank into the crew like a stone. The Deathworld predators had surrounded them not to feast, but to measure them. To judge them. To decide whether these strange intruders from the stars were prey, or something else. The creatures backed away slowly, retreating into the mist with heavy steps that shook the earth. Their glowing eyes lingered for a moment longer, then vanished into the darkness. The jungle fell silent again, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of something watching, something waiting. The humans lowered their weapons, though their hands still shook. Elias finally let out the breath he had been holding. They let us live. The captain didn't look relieved. Her expression was cold, thoughtful, almost grim. No, she said softly. They spared us. That's not the same. The crew realized the truth. They were no longer just visitors on this planet. They were participants in something far greater, something deadly. The predators had given them a chance to prove themselves. The jungle was alive, and it was testing them. Above the canopy, lightning split the sky once more. The storm roared, and the jungle seemed to answer. The humans stood together in the mud, their breaths steaming in the cold air, their hearts racing. They had stepped into the world of monsters, and the monsters were watching. And for the first time in the history of the galaxy, those monsters were not sure if they were looking at prey or rivals. The jungle grew darker as the humans pushed forward. The storm above thickened, covering the sky in rolling clouds that dimmed the light, turning day into a strange twilight. The trees here were older, their trunks thick as towers, their roots twisting like walls around narrow paths. Every step seemed louder in the silence, every breath too heavy. The crew moved slowly, their visors cutting through the mist, scanning for movement. Yet no one needed sensors to know they were being followed. Something was there. The feeling began as a prickle on the skin, a weight pressing against the back of the neck. The humans had been trained to fight, to survive in the harshest conditions, but this was different. This was not random danger. This was presence. watching, measuring. Elias felt it most of all. He had never been to a world like this, and every sound made his pulse race. He glanced at the shadows between the trees, certain that something moved just beyond sight. Once, he swore he saw eyes, bright, glimmering eyes that blinked once and then vanished into the darkness. He opened his mouth to speak, but the captain raised a hand, silencing him before he could give voice to his fear. "Keep moving," Mara said softly. Her voice was calm, steady, but her eyes were sharp. She knew what the crew already suspected. They were not alone, and they hadn't been since the moment they set foot on this world. The jungle was alive with whispers of movement. Branches swayed without wind. Leaves shifted. Every now and then, a low growl rolled through the air, never too close, never too far, but always enough to remind them. The predators were there. They were patient. They were curious. The humans stopped to rest in a clearing where the rainwater had pooled into a wide, shallow basin. The surface reflected the storm above, cracked by flashes of lightning. The crew kept their weapons raised, forming a circle around the captain as they watched every direction. Elias crouched by the pool, splashing water onto his face to wash away the sweat that clung under his helmet. For a brief second, he saw his reflection, tired eyes, pale skin. Then another face appeared beside his in the water. Not human. He jerked back, his weapon rising instantly. The others spun toward him, their visors scanning the area. But there was nothing. Only the pool, rippling from his sudden movement. "I saw something," Elias said, his voice tight. "In the water. Right there." The crew looked uneasy. They wanted to believe he was mistaken, but none of them dared dismiss it. "Not here. Not on this world." The captain said nothing, her gaze sweeping the tree line. Then came the sound. It was faint at first, like the crack of a twig. Then another. And another. Soft, careful steps. But they weren't random. They circled the clearing, always staying just beyond sight. The crew tightened their formation, rifles pointed outward, eyes darting between shadows. And then they saw them. Figures shifted between the trees, tall and thin, moving with a predator's grace. Their bodies gleamed faintly under the rain, slick black skin reflecting the lightning above. Their heads were long and smooth, their jaws wide, lined with teeth that glistened even in the dim light. They didn't rush forward. They didn't roar. They just watched. Dozens of them. Elias's heart hammered in his chest. "They're everywhere," he whispered. One of the creatures leaned forward from the shadows, its eyes glowing faintly. The captain stared back, refusing to look away. Neither moved. It was a contest of silence, of patience. Then the creature tilted its head, as if studying her. Its claws flexed slowly, scraping against the bark of a tree. The crew knew what this was. Not an ambush. A test. The predators were not attacking because they wanted to see what humanity would do. Would they panic? Would they run? Would they fight without thought? Every choice was being weighed. The silence stretched on until it became unbearable. Then the forest spoke. A scream. High-pitched, sharp, like metal tearing. It came from the trees above. The humans spun, weapons raised, scanning the branches. Shapes moved overhead, darting through the canopy faster than the eye could follow. The predators weren't just around them. They were above them. The humans braced, backs to each other, forming a tight circle. The air grew heavy with tension. Mara's voice came through the comms, low and commanding. "Hold your ground. Don't fire unless they do." The predators dropped lower, their forms clearer now. Their jaws dripped with saliva, their tails lashed the air, and still they did not strike. They prowled the edges of the clearing like shadows given flesh, waiting. Elias's hands shook. He had never felt so small, so powerless. "Why aren't they attacking?" he asked, his voice breaking. The captain answered without turning. "Because they're deciding if we're worth killing." A deep growl rolled through the jungle, louder than before. It came from one of the larger creatures, its chest expanding as the sound vibrated through the clearing. It stepped forward, massive claws sinking into the wet ground. The others froze, as if waiting for its command. The humans gripped their weapons, breaths shallow. The captain lowered her rifle just slightly, keeping her eyes locked on the beast. For a long moment, Nothing happened. Then, the massive predator took a step back. It growled once more, a sound that shook the leaves from the trees, and turned away. The others followed. One by one, the shadows retreated into the jungle, their glowing eyes fading into the mist. In moments, the clearing was empty again, silent except for the rain. The crew stood frozen, their weapons still raised, waiting for another sign. But none came. Slowly, they lowered their rifles. Elias let out a trembling breath. They were so close, they could have killed us all. They chose not to, Mara said quietly. She looked out into the mist where the predators had vanished. Which means they're not done with us yet. The crew understood. They had survived another encounter, but it was not over. The predators were still watching. Still waiting. The humans were not prey, not yet. But they weren't allies either. They were something in between. Something unknown. The storm rumbled overhead, and the jungle seemed to whisper with unseen voices. The humans tightened their formation and moved on, deeper into the shadows. Every step carried them closer to the truth of this world. And behind every tree, above every branch, in every patch of darkness, the watchers followed. The rain began to ease as the humans pressed deeper into the alien jungle. The storm clouds above shifted, letting thin beams of light cut through the canopy. Mist clung to the ground, curling around their boots as they moved. Every sound was sharper now, the snap of branches, the distant rumble of something heavy moving through the undergrowth, the faint hiss of insects that scattered as the humans passed. The sense of being watched never left them. The predators still lingered in the shadows, silent and patient. It felt like walking across the battlefield of an unseen war, where every tree could hide an enemy and every gust of wind carried a whisper of danger. The humans moved together, weapons raised but fingers steady, eyes sweeping every direction. Their discipline was the only shield against the fear that gnawed at the edges of their minds. Then, the ground trembled. It was not the rumble of distant thunder or the shifting of roots. This was closer, heavier, deliberate. The crew froze, scanning the trees. The sound came again, thud, thud, like massive footsteps crushing the earth. Leaves shook loose from branches, tumbling down around them. Something large was coming. Elias's grip on his rifle tightened until his knuckles turned white. His breath echoed too loud in his helmet, and he struggled to steady it. "It's close," he whispered. The captain's voice cut through the comms, calm and firm. "Hold position." The footsteps grew louder, shaking the soil beneath their boots. Birds exploded from the treetops, screeching as they scattered into the sky. Then, from the shadows of the jungle, a figure emerged. It was enormous. Twice the height of a human, its body sleek yet powerful, covered in dark armor-like skin that glistened under the weak light. Its elongated head reflected the mist, smooth and curved, ending in jaws filled with gleaming teeth. The creature's claws dug into the earth with every step, leaving deep scars in the mud. Its tail, long and blade-like, swept behind it in slow arcs that cut the air. The humans raised their weapons as one. But none fired. The predator stopped a short distance away, towering above them. Its eyes, dark pools reflecting the storm's light, locked onto the captain. The air grew so heavy that every breath felt like drowning. The beast tilted its head, studying her. No one moved. The silence stretched, broken only by the steady drip of water from the trees. Then, the creature opened its mouth. A deep, resonant growl rumbled from its chest, vibrating through the ground, through the air, through the human's very bones. It was not a roar of rage. It was a voice. And then, against all expectation, the predator spoke. The words were rough, guttural, shaped by a mouth not meant for human speech. But they were clear enough to understand. "You are not prey." The crew stiffened. Elias's eyes widened in shock. His heart hammered so loud it drowned the storm. "It can speak," he whispered, barely believing it. The creature's gaze never left the captain. It stepped closer, each movement slow and deliberate. The humans tightened their formation, weapons trembling in their hands, but Mara raised her arm, signaling them to hold. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Then what are we?" The predator's teeth glistened as its jaws shifted, another growl escaping like grinding stone. "Tested," it said at last. The word hung in the air like a blade. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Mara did not flinch. She stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and the beast. The rain clung to her armor, streaks of mud smeared across her face. She stared up at the towering predator without fear. "What kind of test?" she asked. The creature lowered its head until its hot breath washed over her, steaming against the cool mist. Its voice rumbled again, deeper now, shaking the leaves from the branches above. "Survive. One night. Here." The jungle seemed to stir at those words, as though the entire planet had heard and was waiting. The smaller predators shifted in the shadows, their glowing eyes appearing once more between the trees. They were everywhere now, surrounding the clearing, watching silently. The test had been declared, and the jungle itself was the arena. Elias's stomach twisted. He could already imagine what one night here would mean, endless darkness filled with predators that moved like shadows, every moment a fight to live. "That's suicide," he whispered. But Mara only nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the beast. "We accept." The crew turned to her in shock. "Captain," Elias started, but she silenced him with a glance. "This is why we came," she said firmly. "Not to flee, not to hide. To prove we are not afraid." The massive predator leaned back, its body rising to its full towering height. Its jaws opened in a roar that split the air, louder than thunder, a sound so powerful it shook the earth itself. The creatures in the trees echoed the call, a chorus of voices that filled the jungle with fury and anticipation. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the predators retreated. One by one, they melted back into the shadows, their glowing eyes fading into the mist until only silence remained. The humans were left alone in the clearing, the weight of the challenge pressing down on them. The night was coming. Elias swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the rain. "We won't make it," he said quietly. "No one survives here." Mara's voice was calm, unshaken. "Then we'll be the first." The crew tightened their grips on their weapons, their fear heavy but their resolve harder still. They had been given a chance, and humanity did not turn away from challenges. The jungle shifted, the shadows deepened, and the sky above began to fade from grey to black. The test had begun. And for the first time in countless years, the strongest predators of this world would not be hunting prey. They would be facing humans. The jungle was still damp with blood when dawn finally broke. Pale sunlight crept through the canopy, washing the battlefield in grey light. The rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving behind steam that rose from the ground. All around the humans lay the bodies of predators, claws, fangs, and armored hides now silent in death. The clearing was scarred with craters from explosives, deep gouges where massive claws had torn the earth, and blackened trees where plasma fire had scorched through. The crew stood among the wreckage, battered and exhausted. Armor plates were cracked, helmets dented, and their weapons were nearly empty. Elias leaned on his rifle like a cane, each breath heavy. His chest ached with bruises, and cuts marked his face where claws had grazed him. Around him, the others looked just as broken, but none of them had fallen. Against all odds, every human was still alive. From the shadows, more shapes appeared. These were not the wild predators of the night. These moved with calm, deliberate steps. Their bodies were larger, stronger, their movements filled with quiet control. Their eyes glowed faintly, intelligent and sharp. These were the leaders, the true Deathworld species that had sent the challenge. They came not as hunters, but as judges. Mara straightened as they approached. She wiped blood from her visor and raised her chin. Her weapon was still in her hands, though the energy core inside it was nearly drained. She was ready to fire if needed, but her posture was not one of fear. It was defiance. The lead alien stepped forward. Its body towered over the humans, its chest broad, its arms corded with muscle that seemed carved from stone. Its hide was dark and ridged like armor. The ground seemed to tremble under its weight. When it spoke, its voice rolled like thunder. "You live." 2 words. A statement, not a question. Mara didn't flinch. "We survived your test," she said. Her voice was steady, carrying through the clearing. "Is that enough?" The alien's gaze swept across the battlefield. Its kind had never seen this before. Their world was known across the galaxy as a place where no outsiders returned. Predators here shredded armies, devoured machines, and swallowed the pride of countless species who had dared to step foot on their soil. Yet here stood humans, bloody and tired, but unbroken. The alien tilted its head. Most run. You did not. Most die. You do not. Its eyes narrowed. Why? Elias almost laughed, a sharp, ragged sound. Because that's what we do, he muttered under his breath. Mara silenced him with a glance but did not deny his words. Instead, she answered calmly. We fight because survival is not enough. We endure because surrender is not in us. You wanted to see if we would break. We don't break. The Deathworld leader studied her for a long, silent moment. Around it, the other creatures rumbled low in their throats. Not anger. Not challenge. Something else. Something they rarely gave outsiders. Respect. Suddenly, a roar shattered the silence. From the tree line, one of the surviving predators burst forward. It was massive, larger than the others, its eyes burning with rage. Perhaps it could not accept that these small outsiders had survived. Perhaps it sought to finish what the others had failed to do. It charged, claws raised, its bellow shaking the air. The humans barely had time to react. Elias raised his weapon, but the energy cell clicked empty. Others scrambled for blades, but the beast was already too close. Mara stepped forward. No hesitation. She dropped her rifle, drew her combat blade, and charged straight into its path. At the last second, she slid under its swipe, rolled to her feet, and drove the blade deep into its throat. The creature shrieked, thrashing wildly, but Mara held on. With a final twist, the beast collapsed, its body shaking the ground before lying still. She pulled her blade free, her breath harsh but steady. Then she looked back at the Deathworld leaders. That's why, she said. The clearing was silent. The predators that had circled them all night lowered their heads slightly. Not submission. Not fear. But recognition. For the first time in their history, another species had fought them on their own ground, and stood as equals. The leader rumbled deep in its chest. You are not prey. Those words carried weight. It was not just a statement. It was an acknowledgement, one the Deathworld species rarely gave to anyone. Elias felt something shift in the air. The fear that had hung over them since landing seemed to thin, replaced by something heavier but far more powerful. The strongest predators in the galaxy had looked into human eyes and found something familiar. Mara nodded once, not smiling, not celebrating. Then we understand each other. The leader gave a low growl, almost like laughter. It turned, signaling the others to retreat. Slowly, the predators melted back into the jungle, their glowing eyes vanishing into the mist. Only the leader lingered for a moment longer, its gaze fixed on Mara, then Elias, then the crew. With a final rumble, it too disappeared into the trees. The humans were left alone in the clearing, surrounded by silence once more. Elias dropped heavily onto a fallen log, his shoulders sagging. So, did we just pass? Mara sheathed her blade, her eyes still scanning the tree line. We didn't just pass, she said quietly. We changed something. They'll never look at humanity the same way again. The others didn't argue. They knew she was right. The predators had tested them, expected them to fail, to die like all the others before. Instead, humanity had not only endured, they had fought back, adapted, and stood unshaken. Far away, the galaxy would soon hear of this. The strongest Deathworld species had finally met humanity. And for the first time, they felt something they had never felt before. Not victory. Not dominance. Fear. The sun finally broke through the clouds again, weak but steady. Only the soft hiss of rain and the distant rumble of thunder lingered in the air. Steam rose from the wet ground, filled with roars and screams, around the bodies now lay fallen predators, littered with broken branches. The humans stood in silence, craters of mud, their armor dented, bodies of fallen weapons beasts, nearly useless. Steam rose from the ground still where plasma fire had scorched the worst night of their lives, curling like ghosts, and yet in the early morning felt relief. The humans stood in the center, something larger than the jungle, larger than this single world, and that alone made the silence feel heavier. where every survivor knew this wasn't finished. She could still feel the weight of the alien leader's gaze. From the shadows, hear its voice echoing in her skull. Returned, not prey. Their movements were slow, deliberate. Those words were heavy, carrying the weight of judgment. Heavy to believe. The crew tensed. No outsider had raised ever again, though most were empty. And lived. Elias' no species had ever stood against the predators. The dead power earned even a sliver of respect. He knew it would not fire. Humanity held it anyway. Elias didn't slump against a broken tree. She stood tall, sparking blood streaking her armor. Her blade still let out a last kill. Short, hollow, her eyes locked on the alien leader. We just made history, he said. Its body was scarred. No one back home will believe a word of it. Its glowing eyes Mara turned to him. Around it, the others moved like shadows. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were distant. The alien leader already studied the humans for a long time without speaking. Because the galaxy will swept over the battlefield, this world over the fallen predators, stories, over the humans every empire, endured a every council, every predator out there slowly, will know what happened lowered here. Its massive head. The others not in submission, uneasily, but in acknowledgement. They knew she was right. Stood. It word would spread. Not because they wanted it to, the ground, but because the predators themselves would ensure it. You bled. They had marked humanity now. Not it as paused, prey, the silence not as weak with meaning, but as something that worthy to be such trial. Far away, outside our kind have lived the galaxy's great powers would soon hear the news. Are not like others. Whispers would echo through Elias glanced at Mara, military fleets, then back at the creature. Humans survived. His voice was rough, edged to many disbelief. It would sound impossible. What does that mean? To others, we're not enemies anymore. Elias rubbed the hand over his face, glowed brighter, smearing blood and not dirt across his cheek. Not weak. Respect from monsters, rival. He muttered. That's not a medal I wanted. Those words hung in the air. Mara shook her head. It's strongest predators in the galaxy, she said quietly. The species feared even by empires. We showed them we don't break. They were declaring humanity as something rare. The crew grew silent at her words. Mara finally spoke. The strongest predators in the galaxy had looked into human eyes. Then we walked for the first time not as intruders, but as those who earned their place. Was heavier than any weapon. The alien let out a low growl. As the humans prepared to leave, the jungle parted once more. You earned this time more than it wasn't survival. Predators or leaders. You earned our smaller creatures. From this day that had stayed hidden all night will be remembered. They emerged. The galaxy will know that humanity has their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. Broken. But they did not attack. The circle of predators rumbled. They stood at a distance, watching, their massive as if acknowledging that the balance of this world never leaving the humans. The humans climbed aboard their battered ship. Not yet. Engines coughing. But it was something that could grow into more. From the cockpit, an unspoken Elias looked down in the clearing and storm of the night. The battlefield was a graveyard, towering over Mara until its shadow covered her completely. Humans had done the impossible. Elias as the ship lifted off, the predators in the jungle tilted their heads back. The creature leaned forward, letting out its eyes burning like cries that rolled through the trees. We will see you again, not roars of victory, on this world, not calls of hunger. Beyond it. Something when we meet, different. It will not be sound the galaxy would later recognize it as a kind of ritual. Its voice rumbling a declaration like that a new force had stepped into their world, or as the humans rose into the sky, Mara did leaving the Deathworld behind. Then we'll be ready. But they knew they had not truly left. The alien leader straightened, the mark of that giving night final would follow them wherever they carried through the trees. And beyond the horizon of stars, the predators around it were already beginning. Melting the galaxy had long feared the Deathworld species. Their glowing eyes disappeared into invincible until only silence remained. The humans were alone. There was something new to fear. The night was over. The day the deadliest was Deathworld species Elias met humanity onto the wet ground with a groan. For the first time, hissed as the systems and empires finally failed, looked to the stars and wondering at his side. Not if humans could survive. He let his rifle drop into the mud next, too tired and to care. Somewhere in the silence of space, he muttered between humanity breaths, prepared we survived hell, coming, and now because the devils they knew this was not the end. It was only the first chapter. Mara didn't answer. She stood still for a long time, staring at the jungle where the leaders had vanished. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, her blade hanging loose at her side. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, this isn't the end. This is only the beginning. Around them, the jungle began to stir again. Not with hunters this time, but with the normal sounds of life. Birds cried in the canopy. Insects buzzed. The Deathworld, for now, was at peace. But every human there felt the same chill settle into their bones. They hadn't just survived. They had changed something far greater. Somewhere far beyond this world, the news would spread. Humanity had stood against the deadliest species known, and the predators had not laughed. They had not crushed. They had not won. They had given respect. And that respect carried with it a dangerous promise, that the next time humanity and the Deathworld species met, the galaxy itself might tremble.